We're going to do a little bit of activity too, so just tell me when that's on. It's on. So, good afternoon. My name is Ken Traska, obviously, and I'm the Dean of Instruction here at the college, and it's my pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you today to talk about a topic that actually evolved in my mind over the years as I was teaching English and business and leadership courses, and just looking at ways to better engage and better provide a stronger experience for the students. And one of the ideas that I came up with, literally while I was driving, I think on 355 North at one point, going to class, was a sensefull thinking activity. And it's, essentially the use of the, a kinesthetic approach to learning. And so what I want to do today is introduce to you a little bit about what that is, and that's one of the reasons you have a different color card. As we know, there are 5 senses, and essentially there are 3 of you, so we will be creative in how we address that. In addition, another activity that helped me over the years and that evolved literally over about 5 years is what I call a Sikh Circle. And for me in class, it was always a matter of getting students to interact with one another at a higher level and be comfortable with asking each other questions, or as I often say, testing one another's understanding about what it is they're doing, what it is they think, what it is they think they know. And so this is a framework that I'll go through a little bit. And obviously, there are lots of sample questions and ways for you as a faculty member or staff member to frame questions. And a good thing about it too is for staff, it's a great way to facilitate discussion. Clarify questions. You can, and the seek is you can seek facts, seek commitment, seek action, seek value, seek needs, seek concerns, seek a deeper understanding of a problem, seek feelings, seek opinions at a deeper level. And obviously, as you use this tool more and more, you begin to internalize the questions and the ways in which you approach those questions. Another tool that I did not come up with personally, a gentleman by the name of Tony Buzan came up with a concept years ago called mind mapping. And it actually was an activity or a concept that I used in most of my classes. And to give you an example of this before we kind of move into the first activity, is generally what I would do the first day of my class is I would have like whiteboard paper up around the room, and I would literally split the class up, which may be anywhere from 20 to 30 people, into groups, and what they had to do was they had to create a mind map of what they expected from the class. Or in some cases, if it were a business class, it might be come up with your definition of effective business communications. Some of the things I used to do with that is they couldn't use words. They could use pictures. They could use symbols. And oftentimes what I would do is I would then mix the groups up and shift them around. So if the 3 of you are working, I might see that Alex here is dominant in the group, and I might remove him and put somebody else in that group, therefore shaking it up a little bit. And part of that strategy was keeping students on their toes and giving them the impression that this is kind of how the real world works as well. I mean, you could be working with a team and then suddenly we got to cut somebody and you're left with only 3, but you still have to produce the outcome. So, and then in addition to that, just kind of a summary of kind of what I wanted to talk about today was just a little bit of a couple paragraphs here, and I'm obviously not going to read that, and these will all be posted on the faculty webpage for those that aren't here that are interested in taking a look at these tools. But you can certainly read through that yourself. I kind of summarize what I find as being the value of each of these tools. So to kind of kick things off, one of the things that I found very valuable, and I presented this actually I presented the sensefull thinking activity. It can last anywhere from 10 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the nature of what you want to do, depending on the nature of your debrief, depending on some of the issues that the group is dealing with. But I've done this with classes of 10, 15, 20, 30, all the way to 200 people, and which was a blast. And that was at the NISOD conference in Texas years ago, which was just a fun time in itself. So what I do is I have index cards, and these are the only index cards we could find, but generally, or you can use paper, in different colors paper, different color paper. Each color represents a sense. So ultimately what I do is it's just random. I usually have groups of 5. If I'm off, there might be a 6th person, and that's the 6th sense, and they can come up with what that is. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do this, and as I describe this, you'll get it. So if you have a red card, does anybody have a red card? Barry does. Barry says he's only the cameraman, but Barry is more than the cameraman today. Barry is going to use his ears. He's only going to hear the experience. So
You can write that down if you want. That's here.
So I
and
blocked the
I
camera?
have to write this down too. So. All right. If you did anybody get a blue one? So that would be C. All you will do is see the experience. Green?
Me.
All you will do is taste the experience. I know, that's the one that really
That's
does.
good.
And then, what did I give you,
Yellow.
Alex? Yellow.
Smell it?
Feel.
Oh.
And feel is an interesting one because there's the tangible, and there's also the emotional feel. So I'll let you define that as you want. So we'll just say feel. And then we have one more card, and which is the last one that's left. See, hear,
Smell.
feel, smell. And I will also participate at some level in smell. So what I want the four of you to do is take a couple of minutes, and this is how I facilitate this activity. I'd like all of you to take a couple of minutes and think about and agree on an experience, and I'll give you some examples. One of the best ones that I ever had was there were three guys in the back of a room. This was at, I think, a college in Illinois. And they were like the last three, so there weren't enough to give 5. And they worked on, they said, we are going to Home Depot. That was their experience. And so, for example, I'm making these names up, but Tom heard it, Joe felt it, and Sam tasted it. And then they kind of came up with some other things with the other 2 senses. But what I asked them to do is come up with an experience, agree on it. And it could be anything. It could be in film class. It could be, let's take a look at this and let's just look at it through a lens of, how did that character make you feel? Or what taste did the attitude that person have put in your mouth? I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you've got to think a little bit out of the box. Or what did you see that might not be so obvious to other people? And that's about the critical thinking. So you agree on the experience. Another one could be, we're eating food on an airplane. Everybody has to be on the same page with that. So that's what the experience is. So once you agree on a topic, you each spend, and I'm only going to give you a couple of minutes to jot down some key, reflections or ideas that relate to the sense that you've been assigned. So if it's, at Starbucks, and I say, I just want you to experience that through the sense of smell, you would write down everything that possibly relates to that experience, but only through the sense of smell. If you have taste, it would only be through the sense of taste, the sense of see, the sense of feel, or the sense of listening. So take about 3 minutes to do that, and then what you do, the ultimate outcome of this, and it varies depending on the course. In an English class, the end product would be a 1-page essay that they write collaboratively. This activity, by the way, is always done when I did it in class, the very first class. So it was not only an icebreaker, but it also linked to providing students with a sense of what that class would be like. It would be very interactive. We would, at some level, always be tuning into our senses at different levels when we read literature, when we wrote our papers, when we discussed things amongst each other. And I found it to be an awesome way to frame not only your objectives, but also to sort of create a level of enthusiasm with the students. So it wasn't just, I'm lecturing to you about what so-and-so means or what so-and-so is, but at some point I give them an opportunity to reflect through activities like this. So with that being said, what I'm going to ask you to do is, first of all, take a couple minutes, agree on something. Then once you do that, each jot down on your card or on your paper, and that's why you have this, just kind of to scribble things down, just some of the key ideas or representations of that sense that relate to the experience. Then the last part is, it would be fun, I think, if you spent 5 or 10 minutes, and it doesn't have to be that long, and it doesn't have to be perfect, there is no right or wrong, but bring that experience together. And think of this, I used to tell my students all the time, and it got funny at some point, but if somebody says, oh, it tasted like dirt, okay, I would, and sometimes it wasn't dirt, it was another word, so I would write that word on the board. And I'd say, okay, so Gene, you said it tasted like dirt, and you can fill in the blank for dirt, right? It could be crap. So what does that taste like? Describe that to me. And then they're like, oh, I don't know. So, but what I would do is I would then use a mind mapping technique, and they would start. I'm like, well, give me some characteristics of the taste of dirt. Well, it's crunchy, or it's, and then before you know it, we have this picture of what dirt tastes like. And so students are like, well, I never thought of dirt that way. I just thought of dirt as being dirt, and if I say it tasted like dirt, people should know what I mean. And so part of my
underpinning strategy there was to get students to think beyond the obvious and to think a little bit more critically about what it is. And I would say, hey, you might say, hey, you know, Mr. T, they used to call me, is a pretty cool instructor. Well, I'd say, why? And they're like, I don't know, you just seem pretty cool. What does that mean? Or if a girl walks by, I think she's cute, right? I mean, I'm talking with students, and I'm like, well, why? Well, is it because the way they walk, the way they talk, their attitude, the way, whatever? And they're like, oh, yeah, I never really thought about breaking it down like that. I said, that's about your ability in building your skills to be analytical, to be critical, and to think a little bit beyond just the linear way in which we often think. Because really, we've all been taught to think in a very linear way. So this is more of a radical or radiant way of thinking about things. So with that lesson being just told to you, I would expect that you do not say, you know, okay, you know, the coffee tasted delicious. Well, I would rather have you say the coffee tasted like, and you could use metaphors, you could use descriptive terms to enrich that sensible experience. The challenge is this: when you go into an experience, you never hear it, feel it, taste it, smell it, and see it in that order. So the challenge is for you to blend those senses, so then at, say, 12:34-ish, somebody reads that experience. And it might just be a half page, here's what we did. So, and it's just the exercise is what I want you to go through. So the end result, it might be, you know, okay, right, or average, and that's fine, because it's just an exercise. And then we'll have some fun with that. And what I do essentially is I have each group read these at the end. And usually, you know, I used to teach a lot of night classes, and so they'd be 3 hours. So this whole activity might be the first hour of class, but it was a great way to introduce each other. It was a great way to break the ice. It was a great way to get students immediately to start thinking at a deeper level and to have some fun with it. And then they also got a sense of my style and and sort of what I expected from them, and likewise what ultimately I wanted them to start thinking about what they expected of me. So with that being said, you know, we're going to get you into the activity. So again, I'll recap. The first part is to agree on an experience, and then then write independently of everyone else, just a couple of minutes, what are some things that reflect that sense about the experience, and then come together, share a little bit about what you jotted down, and then pick somebody in your group to be the designated writer, and then bring all that together. And it doesn't have to be perfect. As a matter of fact, there's no expectation of how it has to be. You know, it can be whatever you want. It could be a poem for the matter of this. It could be a short paragraph. It could be, you know, just you read a bunch of the words. I mean, be creative with it. And then we'll read it, we'll hear it, and then we'll go from there. So that's it for the first activity. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of these others, and then answer any questions, and then we'll go from there. So we'll have Barry maybe pause it for a second, and then as you guys are working, he can record a little bit of your interaction. So, there you go. So, can you see me?
Writing this for the chief.
Yep. So, as the group finishes up, what we've done is we've taken a couple of minutes and we've gone through the process of the activity, which is essentially to agree on an experience, to then from your own sense, so if you were assigned see, feel, hear, taste respectively, you would reflect on that experience through that sense, through words, symbols, whatnot. The final step of the activity is for the group to come back together and blend those senses together into a sort of a synthesis of the experience, and then somebody from the group would read that. That's what the group's finishing up now. So we're going to give them an opportunity to go ahead and read the experience. And as I've said to the group, there's no right or wrong answer. And this is an excellent activity to do at the beginning of your class, the very first week, as an icebreaker, as a way to encourage students to begin thinking a little bit beyond the obvious. So with that being said, we'll pass it over to the trio here. Okay, so, Lori Stahl, you can read the camera.
GCC Commencement, composed by our Sensefull classroom experience. A graduating class at GCC on a Friday night is the place to be. Banners hanging green, all graduates wanting to be seen. Clouds of cologne and perfume dance around green and gold of the room. Marching through their next door of life, Our students, we hope, will have no strife.
Nice. Great. So, an example of the activity. Now, you know, the activity itself can actually evolve into whatever you want, and you know, these handouts again will be posted on the faculty website for you to use and make them your own. Please feel free to use them to the whatever level you want. So that's that. Generally at the end of the activity, once all the groups in the class have done this, we'll essentially revisit some of the objectives and underpinning strategies that relate to this activity, which is obviously some very quick team building and synergy building within the class. Another idea that I found very helpful is that it helps students begin to think in other ways. You know, most of us are very dependent on one or two of our senses. We see everything, or we just, you know, or we may have a very sort of, you know, strong feeling about something, but we don't really listen very well, or we don't really, you know, stop and, as they say, smell the roses, so to speak, and you can interpret that however you want, but, you know, it's a matter of just stepping back and reflecting. So it offers the students, if anything else, an opportunity to immediately reflect on an experience, use their critical thinking skills, connect with other students in class, feel comfortable about what the class is going to be, with the instructor, with their peers, and so forth. Usually after that, I would then move into describing the syllabus and the objectives of the course, and somehow find creative ways of linking what we've done back into the objectives of the class. Another good activity, and it's ultimately something that's threaded throughout the entire course, is the Sikh Circle. And you know, this actually I've used in both online courses, which works excellent because ultimately, you know, you can, you know, in some way use all of these questions to push your students on your discussion boards, to test their understanding about things. And I'll post this on the board, on the website, but ultimately it's a circle. And, you know, hence, you know, why I call it the Sikh Circle. And around the circle are words like commitment, action, value, needs, problems, feelings, opinions. And within the document itself, I've provided a number of example questions, as well as key terms that you can use to help frame your question. So, for example, I have come up with precision questions, challenging questions, and reflective questions. And examples of those. Precision question. So if Alex asks me a question or something, I say, so what exactly do you mean by that? Or how exactly do you think that happened? Or does that include everyone? Challenging questions might be, okay, so what's stopping you from thinking a little bit more about what you think really happens at the end of this film? Or what would happen if you thought about it this way? Or in considering Jean's thought that she just had, what's stopping you from trying to understand where she's coming from, at least from a XYZ perspective? Reflective questions are, that's a great point, Lori, but have you also thought of this? And if they haven't, I might say, take a minute and think about it. One thing I've learned very well is you have to be okay with silence as well. So, you know how you ask a student a question and nobody says anything, and I often say, I'm okay with silence, and I might have a seat, and it kind of feels like maybe there's a little bit of discomfort. I'm completely comfortable, but I'm wanting that person the time to maybe think about what it was I asked them, rather than saying to Lori, so have you thought about this? Well, you know, one of the things I thought about, and I haven't even given you a chance to respond. So it's also a way for an instructor to help frame and structure their lectures in a way in which they have challenging questions for students, and that's helping them. Because obviously we, at some level, know the answers, but we want those students to think about that. Some of the other words on the bottom I have are difficulty, cope, unhappy, impact. I might say, so what makes you unhappy about that character? Or, you know, what do you think the consequence of, you know, I'm talking film because I'm going to do this film next week with Alex, but, you know, but it could be math. So, okay, in terms of the result that you came up with, you know, have you thought of the alternative? If you move on, I have some practice questions, you know, seeking core problems, seeking facts, seeking opinions, seeking feelings, you know. And these are all ones I've come up with, or colleagues have come up with, or if I'm in sessions or training, people throw out there and I kind of take them and put them in here. But this has been evolving over the years. At the end of this is an action-oriented dialogue thing that I've come up with as well, that is just something as a bonus for you. And it's all about, for me, it's about how you frame the discussions, how you frame the interactions with your students. And this can be used at any level. It's not just for class. It can be used in your personal lives. It can be used really at any level. And it's just a matter of how you want to practice and how you want to implement that. So we're not going to do anything around this, but you might want to think about how that applies to what you're doing. Or you might want to, next time you're in class, kind of have this in front of you. And if students are working on something, you might pose some of these challenging questions for them so that they open up a little bit. As a follow-up to this, I'm going to send you a link, or you can Google this as well. If you Google Tony Buzan, he's up here, mind mapping. Mind mapping, for me, is absolutely powerful. I mean, I love it. I've used it almost in every class I've ever taught. And it's an opportunity for students to get up and to think outside of the box and to think a little bit more broadly around what it is they're trying to solve or what it is they're trying to do. And a couple of good icebreakers with this are, some of the things I used to do with students. I'd say, okay, I put like the word, and we'll do this as an example, and then we'll wrap up. But I might say, okay, it's the end of the semester, everybody, and it's not because it's week 1. But at the end of the semester, we're going to have a party. So, as an example of how to process mind mapping, I might say, okay, start talking to me about what we need to have the best party that this college has ever had. Start throwing stuff out at me. So,
Money.
So we're going to need money, which means we need to buy new markers because they don't work. So we need money. And then somebody else.
Entertainment.
We need so we'll just say we need music and entertainment. Now so I might say entertainment, and then somebody might say music, and then I might say, hey, we need a comedian. And then somebody might say, hey, yeah, we need this kind of music, or this kind of music, or this kind of music. What else, Jeannie? What do we need?
Refreshments.
We need food. And now from food, we start to break that out. Well, we're going to need crackers. We're going to need drinks. I'm writing quick. We're going to need whatever. And then from that, we might need some different kinds of cheeses. And before you know it, you've got this enormous picture of what it takes to have a party. Now, the next step for this is to begin to categorize these. So you might say, okay, this is all food, and Alex is going to be in charge of that. Okay. Now, the money part, obviously in some way links to everything, so we're going to have to figure that out. But we might say, okay, the entertainment is this, and then somebody else might say we need people. We need people to come, so we're going to need invitations. What this does, especially I found in like writing courses or even business, is organizing proposals or organizing your paper. So I now have 3 sections. This paper is going to describe organizing a party. There are 3 important levels to organizing a party. First, money, second, entertainment, and the third is food. This essay will break down what you need to do with each of these. I'm coming up with this off the top of my head, but this actually can get pretty fun. Sometimes we do it where I have students come up and they'll add. The cool thing about mind mapping is it's about building off of other people's ideas. A really cool company is Volkswagen. I used to do some work with them in Chicago, and they used to have a room a little bit bigger than this room, about twice as high ceiling. It was all a whiteboard. The whole room was, so that new paint they have, you can write with the markers. The whole room was that. And it was called their think room or their think tank. And there were mind maps like this that were the entire length of this wall. And people would come in and they would build off of one another's ideas, and then once a month they would come into that room and they would begin to break down the ideas. And that's a lot of the reason why they're innovative in terms of a company. Because everybody has a role in contributing to the bigger idea. And there is no right and there is absolutely no wrong answer. Because it's when you don't put something up there because you're afraid it's wrong or it just doesn't fit that it affects the entire process. Everybody should have the opportunity to do that. So just kind of a quick Reader's Digest example of how that's worked when I've done some things out there, whether it's teaching a community college course or whatever, or working with a company. So it's been a lot of fun. So with that being said, we've got a couple of minutes. Questions, thoughts, anything at all?
It's interesting. One of my film students is in my public speaking class, and as I said, I showed a Peter Sellers Pink Panther movie, and I think I told you, and I talked to Ryan about the fact that there was very little, if any, laughter through the whole film, and I'm just rolling around.
Yeah.
So I asked the guy, I said, what did you think of the Pink Panther film? Well, I kind of liked it, but I thought it would be funnier. It was like, explain that. What do you mean?
Right.
What do you think is funny? What
Yeah.
is funny to you?
Mm-hmm.
And he just wasn't able to quite articulate it. But it's like you're saying about different.
And that's where I always,
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to really, and that's tough. It is. It could be, you know, what's my frame of reference as a person? If I'm asked to answer a question, I'm going to answer that question based on my experience.
Right,
Or
right.
my frames of reference.
Right.
Which oftentimes can be broken up as family, religion, social, political, and all of those things influence maybe how I define humor. You know, when, you know, I might be looking at it through, you know, a different sort of lens. So something that might seem absolutely stupid to you, I'm laughing till next Tuesday at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, my God, that's hilarious. And you're like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And there's values, there's experience. So that's the cool thing that makes stuff like this even more interesting, because it gives students and it gives colleagues and professionals, whatever level you're at, a completely different perspective on where other people are coming from. And also, I think, a level of comfort in being able to do stuff like this and not feel uncomfortable. Because it's okay that Alex is looking at this through this lens and I've always saw it through this lens. But what if I broaden my lens a little bit and consider some, you know, and then before you know it, you know, 16 weeks later or 12 weeks later, I think at some level people have really broadened how they approach things. You know, whether it's being able to ask more thoughtful questions through the Sikh Circle concept, or whether it's, you know, through planning something in a little bit different way in which might provide more depth or more perspective. Or if it's just a matter of, you know, let me step back and really hear what Gene's saying. Or let me really take a look at what Lori is trying to show me here and really think about it. You know? And as crazy as that sounds, those are very powerful tools. And none of this stuff is revolutionary. I mean, I think at some level all this has existed forever and ever and ever. It's just a matter of how we apply it and how we reinforce it. So with that being said, if there aren't any more questions, I appreciate your time. Thank you for supporting the program. And this is the last one of the year, so we have a number of new programs next year, so be sure to look out for those in the next couple of weeks. And those of you watching this on video, thank you for spending some time online, checking out our program, and for supporting the Center for Faculty and Staff Development. See you guys soon.